Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Welcome to this episode of Alien Lizard Humanoids. Tonight we'll be looking at the case of the cocaine bear. We'll start with introductions. Jeff?
My name is Jeff Pincin, licensed mental health counselor in Delaware and Pennsylvania. And if you leave a comment or a question below, we may be able to answer it in one of the future videos. And if I hadn't become a counselor, I really wanted to be somebody that wears Gucci shoes, expensive Italian shoes, every time that I jump out of planes. Turns out there's no money to be made there. Nobody's going to pay you to wear certain shoes to jump out of a plane. At least not that I've found yet. So when the money wasn't coming in, I kept jumping out of planes and no money coming in naturally. And I had to shatter that dream. Thankfully, I was not shattered, just the dream. And resorted to counseling.
Oof. It's a shame there aren't more sponsors for that.
You would think, right? You would think people would be just throwing money at you. Nope.
Even other types of shoes, like maybe boots, nothing, sneakers?
I mean, I thought about it. I put some feelers out there to get some market research. Nothing.
Sandals, nothing?
Nothing.
Oh.
Yeah, Nike didn't jump at Air Pincin.
You would think with how catchy that is, you would think that they would jump right on it. No pun intended with the jump part, with the plane and Nike. Yeah. Nope. They didn't go for it.
Wow.
It's like I don't play basketball or something, so they don't want anything to do with me.
Right.
Who would have thought?
Another career that gets shattered with, ended up in counseling, right? Ends up
Right.
in counseling and the dream is gone.
Yeah.
Mike?
My name is Mike Smith, also a licensed professional counselor in the state of Delaware, currently a clinical supervisor, drug and alcohol rehab, self-styled expert in all things geek. If I hadn't become a counselor, at one point in my life, I was trying to set myself up to be an outfitter for your urban amateur smuggler / mercenary.
Oh, there you go.
But one that's a very small, a very, very niche market, very small number of people purchasing. I wanted to sell stuff like, your super deluxe spy watch that like shoot little mini darts or tear gas, stuff like that.
Yep.
Turns out that stuff's really expensive and I just didn't have the capital for it. And just promising those kinds of people that you'll get it for them, it's a little bit dangerous. I don't like to live that dangerous.
Yeah, right.
But that clientele does expect a certain amount of confidentiality, which did transfer well into counseling.
There you go.
There you go.
Nice.
Oh.
So it was just an easy...
Shattered dream, but a useful skill found.
There you go. Okay.
Very good.
Man.
So this particular case is interesting, right? Because it features a bear who ingested cocaine and died. That's pretty much the entire story. Kind of wrap up.
We're done. See you.
See you later.
But then I think it just ended up kind of making people curious and led to these stories, and you end up with this whole kind of mythology that's been built around this poor bear. Really, the bear's the victim in this story. And it involves this guy, Andrew Thornton, and this whole kind of setup to how the bear gets the cocaine. And then we see it kind of deviates. You have two paths. You have the story of Andrew and then the story of the bear, the mythology, which ends up being a movie.
Yeah.
So let's hear a little bit of background here on this case.
Yeah. So Andrew Thornton, born in 1944. He had a lot of different things that he did in his life involving the armed forces, becoming a police officer, etc. The part that kind of brings us to the drug involvement, he was part of the narcotics squad on the police force, the Lexington police force, earned a law degree, but he kind of switched purposes with that. So maybe there just, wasn't enough excitement in his life. He was searching for more action, something. So while he was on the narcotics squad, he was involved in drug trafficking. And while he was doing the various things he was doing, was involved in drug trafficking, criminal organizations, and so forth. He was the type of person that was just never content with what he was doing. Always looking for the next adventure, always looking for the next way of getting some kind of thrill, something like that. So September 11th, 1985 is what brings us to the cocaine bear part of the story. He was on a drug smuggling run from Colombia. Him and a partner jump out of the plane. They had dumped packages of cocaine in Georgia already, and he jumped out of the plane, and something happened with his parachute. Got tangled somehow. something happened. His parachute did not deploy like it should have. It did not help him get down on the ground like it should have. He ended up free falling from the plane at some point in midair, landed on a driveway in Tennessee. And on him, when he landed, he had a whole bunch of things, which we'll go into.
He did not survive.
He did not survive.
He did not survive.
Right.
It was
He
a
did not
bad landing.
survive that fall.
It was a landing he did not walk away from.
That's true. Very true. So so that was interesting enough to begin with. Then, to make it more interesting, 3 months later, a decomposed dead black bear was found in a national forest in Georgia, having died from a cocaine overdose. It was assumed that the bear had gotten the cocaine from the drop that Andrew Thornton had made months earlier. The autopsy showed that the bear had a lot of cocaine in its system, so that occurrence was the inspiration for the film Cocaine Bear, which has almost nothing to do with the actual events.
No, next to nothing.
Completely ridiculous movie.
Absolutely.
Of a crazed, bloodthirsty bear high on cocaine, a giant bear, and the one we're talking about here, they said was maybe around 150 pounds. The one in the movie was much bigger than that, and was just bloodthirsty, killing everyone that it came in contact with.
It just wanted more cocaine.
Just wanted more cocaine, right? The story of every bear you've ever met, of course. So that's where we leave off our lack of heroes in this story.
Yeah, so spoiler alert for the movie Cocaine Bear.
I think the title gives it away.
I was going to say, I think the title is the spoiler.
I mean, to be fair, it was just a working title. It wasn't supposed to be released under the name Cocaine Bear, but when they got down to it, the producers were just like, well, we can't think of anything else. Just go with it.
I can't imagine it being any other title.
No. Any other title would just not have done it justice. The posters are amazing. Just a bear and cocaine and the title Cocaine Bear.
We'll have to see if there's a sequel, Heroin Bear, Ecstasy Bear.
Crystal Meth Bear.
Going into treatment bear.
Breaking Bear.
Breaking Bear.
Breaking Bear.
It cooks meth.
Maybe the one where he goes into treatment bear, goes through the whole system.
28-day program bear.
He'd be Heisenbear.
There you go.
Cooking meth under the name Heisenbear.
Mike, what was the alternative name or the name that people just call the movie online or something? You had said something before we started recording.
Which
Pablo
Escobar.
Yeah.
The name of the cocaine bear. In Kentucky, there is a stuffed bear on display in the Kentucky Fun Mall that claims to be the remains of the cocaine bear. Not likely, because it was described as having been there for 3 months, decomposing. Mm-hmm. Not much left to taxidermy at that point, but it might have something in it. I don't know. But on display there, it is nicknamed Pablo Escobar. There's a plaque beneath it that calls it Pablo Escobar, the real cocaine bear.
There's an interesting story we might want to look at someday about the cocaine hippos.
Oh, yeah.
Pablo Escobar's hippos, yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have bears that I know of, but he did have hippos, and it really threw off the
ecosystem down in Colombia.
Ecosystem in South America and in Colombia.
They're currently trying to get him out, I believe. There was they come out with some kind of, this is what it's going to cost to get him out of there.
I need to offer them more cocaine, I guess.
But they've been breeding for a while now, so.
Pablo Escobar in general is just an incredible story.
Yeah.
It's just one of those stories where the numbers are just mind-boggling. He had warehouses of cash he couldn't launder fast enough. I think I read one report that said like rats destroyed like $30 million in cash or something, maybe more. Like he couldn't do anything with it.
Couldn't get rid of it fast
Yeah,
enough.
so he bought hippos. That was one of the many things he did. I guess the hippo dealers didn't worry about the history behind the money. They just take the bundles of cash.
No, if they're kidnapping baby hippos out of Africa, I'm pretty sure they don't care where the money's coming from.
That's true.
They're just going to take that money and run.
Somebody's got to launder it. You ever see the series Ozark? Called Ozark?
I actually have not. No.
Pretty good series about the pitfalls of money laundering.
Okay.
And how that game is played. Very good series. Filmed in kind of I don't know what it's called, but it's like blue.
Okay.
like they leave a filter off or they put a filter on. I don't know how they create the effect, but it's very blue. The entire series, very blue.
Okay. Supposed to give it like an old look or a certain perception
kind of
of something?
depressing look.
Depressing, okay.
Yeah, and I think it worked. I think it was kind of a depressing series, but it was good. It was fun in some ways, but it was also kind of highly melancholy for vast portions of it. But yeah, some interesting personalities there. All right, so taking a look at, we'll start with Thornton, and then we'll kind of move up to take a look at the Cocaine Bear again. The bear didn't do much, so it's really the movie.
Yeah.
The bear pretty much just died.
Right.
Yeah.
That was
in reality.
But it was dead next to a duffel bag that had cocaine residue on it. So there was a lot of questions about what happened to the cocaine. And when they looked and they found that, there was some cocaine residue in the bear, the question is, but did the bear eat all the cocaine? Yeah. Where's the kids? The duffel bag was empty. But if it links back to the same duffel as Thornton had, it would have been something like 75 pounds worth of cocaine, like 35 kilos. And that was empty next to the bear. Did the bear eat 35 pounds of cocaine? The answer is no. Mm-hmm. The bear probably only ingested about 3 grams. It was a 150 to 175 pound black bear. So not much bigger than an average adult male. Mm-hmm. And it ate in one go an entire 8-ball of cocaine. Like that's enough to take down most guys Jeff's size.
Let alone a bear.
Let alone a bear. And he ate about probably 1 or 2 mouthfuls was enough to get that 3 grams, and then his heart exploded. Massive cerebral hemorrhage and cardiac arrests followed shortly after. But then the other 75 pounds worth of cocaine just vanished. And that was the big question. Where did the cocaine go? Mm. And let's be honest. Somebody says bear, you don't think small.
Right.
We think big. We think grizzlies, right? If it's grizzly, how much cocaine did it take to kill a grizzly bear? Well, in the movie Cocaine Bear, it's a 400-pound bear. It's bigger than me. A lot.
Yep.
Because it kept eating.
It just kept going.
It kept going.
Yeah.
More and more cocaine.
Yeah, and it never branched out. It didn't mix with alcohol. A lot of people do. No. It didn't like speedball. Right. There was no cocaine and heroin, right?
Yeah.
It was steady on the high. Right. It wasn't looking for the low to balance out. So very imbalanced bear.
And odd that it started with cocaine. It didn't even start with alcohol.
I would expect marijuana or alcohol.
Yeah, marijuana or alcohol. I think the study we did at Eagleville way back showed like 70% of people started with alcohol or marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not Cocaine Bear. Cocaine Bear went straight for the hard stuff.
Yep. Abnormal presentation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Would have been interesting to study, if he had gotten some help for it.
Sadly, he overdosed.
Right.
Did not get a chance to go to rehab.
Right. Another lost cause.
Yeah, another soul lost to the war on drugs.
Mm.
They could have tried some motivational interviewing with the bear.
There you go.
Possibly.
Are you ready to change?
The problem is the bear needs to want to change at that point. And I don't think the bear was ready.
Did not look like it.
It was in the pre-contemplative stage of change.
Well, we don't know what happened on the trails. Wherever that bear was found, there could have been people around there trying to get the bear some help. You don't have to do this. There's better ways out there. It could have happened, and then maybe refused. No, I'm doing this. I want the cocaine.
I'm not sure if they were able to do an intervention out there, or
they might have
an ursavention. Trying to get the bear to go to rehab. Not sure.
They might have. Somebody might have tried. Maybe his bear friends.
It's possible. Some of his bear friends might have been trying.
Might have been supportive.
No.
It sounds like they barely made an effort.
Maybe one of the rangers out in the woods just hanging out.
Maybe.
Man, bear, you got a problem. You should go to rehab. And the bear's just like, Murr!
I don't have a problem. You have the problem.
It's like, you got a problem with me.
Well, Yogi Bear was a troublemaker, but he never did cocaine.
Never went to the hard stuff that we know of.
Those all could be metaphors, right? The picnic baskets. We don't know what they were filled with.
That's true.
Right? Winnie the Pooh, talking about honey. Well, what's in that honey?
Mm.
They were highly motivated bears, right?
They were highly motivated bears. Like, I don't know, if you look at Winnie the Pooh and you look at, some of your classic signs of a marijuana user, they're very similar.
What do you think Eeyore
I'm not
got
saying
into?
I'm not saying that he is.
What do you think Eeyore got into then?
Eeyore's just depressed.
Just depressed?
He's
He
a lot
wasn't
of
taking
depression.
anything?
I don't believe so, no. I think he could have used some,
Okay. Yeah.
but unfortunately they didn't have a counselor or psychologist or a psychiatrist in the 100-acre woods.
Christopher Robin wasn't very helpful with that.
No, being
not
a
provide-
12-year-old is really difficult to try and recruit a
Professionals.
psychiatrist to come to an imaginary land.
Right. Yeah, he didn't really try to get them much help.
No.
Not much resources out there.
Underfunded.
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely underfunded.
So speaking of alcohol, this Andrew Thornton was born in Bourbon County, Kentucky, right? Which I take it is the home of
Jack
alcohol,
Daniels.
the same name, right? And his mother and father owned a thoroughbred horse farm. Apparently had a lot of money.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thoroughbreds.
Yeah.
That's bank right there.
Had a
In
lot.
fact, their family actually owned 2 Kentucky Derby winners, which is no mean feat for any ranch or farm.
So he had a lot of options. He went to a military academy in Tennessee, supposed to be a good school. Then he went to the University of Kentucky, but dropped out, went to the Army, and he was in the 82nd Airborne Division and actually received a Purple Heart during the invasion of the Dominican Republic that happened in 1965. A lot of people probably even know the United States invaded
I didn't.
Dominican Republic. Yeah. He went back to college after that, but then dropped out. So you kind of see the sensation seeker profile.
Right.
Definitely a high amount of sensation seeking and thrill seeking. Like he wanted to be, he left college to go into the Army because he wanted that thrill. And he really enjoyed being a paratrooper, jumping out of airplanes, parachuting down. Like, he really enjoyed that kind of thing. And anything he got to do that was dangerous, he would go for.
Yeah.
Thus the Purple Heart.
He took a lot of risks. In 1968, he became a police officer, another occupation associated with high sensation seeking, very much so. And this was in Lexington, Kentucky. He tried college again, and this time graduated with a degree in law enforcement.
Yeah.
It helped, I think, that he had a thrill-seeking job by day,
Right.
and was able to then use some of the things he was learning on the job for class at night. And
Probably thought that he was able to get perhaps more thrills out of that. If he could get the degree, then might be able to move up and do more thrilling things on the police force, which he did.
Which he did, yeah. He moved up. He started working with the narcotics division,
Right.
which became an issue.
Yeah. This was in the early 1970s when there was a lot of new things happening in drugs, and really the idea of enforcement was changing a lot. It was a lot different then than it is now. Back then, pretty much everyone agreed that the drug dealers were the bad guys, the drug users were the bad guys. Everything with drugs was bad. There was no concern about treatment. There was no kind of view that, like, okay, dealing's bad, but maybe using is an illness. None of that existed to any degree.
It was a war. It
Yes.
was us against them.
It's combat. Yeah.
And Nixon was the first to use the term war on drugs. But it was kind of like the DEA existed, but it wasn't as it is now, as hugely funded and driven. So what you got a lot of was like, okay, there's the DEA office, and then a bunch of people in local police report to the guy in the DEA office locally. They were all then considered DEA narcotics cops. The problem is people like Andrew Thornton, they would go out and they would find the drug dealers, and they would, they'd arrest them, and they'd take, whatever they had, like the supply that they had, and then they would set half of it aside, put the other half in evidence, because that was enough to get them convicted. And then they take the other half back out on the street and start selling it to people.
Yeah.
And or using it.
And or using it.
Yeah. Andrew would take drugs. He would take money. He would sell drugs. He would plant evidence if somebody didn't have drugs and he wanted them to go prison anyway, and he had plenty of evidence to plant because he was stealing the drugs and the money. So he actually was, this is a time when you could be corrupt and get away with it for a long time, especially as law enforcement. But he was so bad, the FBI actually paid attention to him, although they never followed through, apparently.
Yeah, I think they were working on gathering evidence, and then he quit because he got his law degree and went to become a lawyer.
1976, he became a lawyer, and he started telling people that he was a member of a criminal organization referred to as the Company. So sensation-seeking, but not real creative with his naming.
But by that point, he was doing some smuggling stuff, primarily of marijuana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was actually a part of criminal organizations, but he bragged about it, which is unusual.
He's also a prodigious smuggler. Like, he was taking a lot, bringing a lot of stuff in. Yeah. He had his partner on the police force. He was John Kanan. Was just as bad.
Yeah, and this company, as it was called, had hundreds of people involved in drug distribution and transportation. So again, I think at this time, especially with like an airplane moving drugs in the country, it was pretty easy. It was very easy.
Yeah,
it was expensive to get the plane and the training and everything, but once you had that, and drug cartels had a lot of money,
right,
when they knew what to do with, you could beat the system very easily. It was not difficult at all. They probably made it more dangerous than they needed to, really.
Yeah.
Well, Thornton probably did just on purpose, just to make it more dangerous.
It's I think about maybe the differences between then and now. Obviously, we can transmit information very quickly now. Pictures, phone calls, information, whatever, no matter where somebody's at with cell phones, of course. But I'm thinking about a time like the mid-'70s or so, when, you could transmit information, but not nearly as quickly and not nearly to as many people at one time, whether it be phone calls, but you had to do it from an office or from, wherever there's a physical landline, maybe faxes or something like that, where you could send information, but not very well, not like it's real detailed or real good quality. And that probably worked to the criminal's advantage. It almost certainly did, because if multiple people couldn't find out something at the same time, they couldn't necessarily react as quickly as they might be able to. So it was probably pretty difficult to catch up with what the criminals were doing because of just how information traveled at the time and how many corrupt people there were as well. It probably all worked together in favor of the criminals much differently than it might now.
Yeah, many of them got caught because they made obvious mistakes based on impulsivity and drug use, not necessarily because of the actual smuggling. It was the same characteristics that drove them to be a smuggler that caused their arrest, but not actually the smuggling.
Right.
Sometimes it actually was good investigation on the part of
Informants.
honest investigators. And sometimes there was one story, late 70s, early 80s out of Miami, right, where the FBI set up a cell phone store that they would do installation of car phones and cell phones, and they kind of advertised that they would keep it quiet and on the down low, and that drew in a bunch of dealers and eventually some of the higher ups in Miami, and then they started talking on their phones that the FBI actually owned, and talking. They would use the place as a clubhouse, like their little store. They would use a clubhouse, and they knew the people who were there. Didn't know they were FBI agents, but would sit there and talk to them, and then they'd sit and just sit back and talk on their phones in Spanish or Portuguese, whatever they knew, because they didn't think anybody in the office understood them, but they did. So they were listening, paying attention, and all of it was being recorded. And they ended up nailing about 95 different drug dealers that way.
Clever.
It was that's a clever investigative technique, but something I don't think that would work today. Just because cell phones are so easy.
Sure.
burner phones.
Yeah, you can go to Walmart and get half a dozen burner phones in 5 minutes. You don't need somebody to install it in your car.
Maybe that's the trick. Maybe people have to go back to car phones to avoid some kind of somebody finding them. Like,
I mean, we're going back to flip phones.
yeah, right. So maybe that would draw a lot of attention. Like, this guy's got a car phone. We better check him out. But maybe there's, maybe that makes it more difficult to track or something. Maybe that's the future of criminal activity.
I know that Andrew Thornton probably didn't have a car phone initially. He might have later on because he very much took on a 007-esque kind of view for himself. But that was after, like, when he became a lawyer, I think he brought one of his old friends from grade school in who had connections who wanted to be a business person. One had all sorts of underworld connections, but he also wanted to form some connections in Vegas. He wanted to go to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
And in Vegas at the time, was it the Chiga brothers? The Chigua brothers? I think it was. They were a couple of gangsters, like, connected with the cartels. And Thornton got involved with them, which is where he got a lot of work through them.
Yeah, he stayed busy, that's for sure. He was always doing something.
But that's what took him out west and got him into California, which is where he ran into some problems.
Right. In 1981, was accused of stealing military weapons from a naval air station in Fresno, California. Him and a bunch of people.
Yeah, I think he was identified as one of 25.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this is pretty amazing, right? Sidewinder missile. This is the radar equipment from a Sidewinder missile. Infrared rifle scopes, low-light television camera, and miniature remote-controlled helicopter. I guess kind of like a drone.
Mm-hmm.
Or early drone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they were to be traded for drugs. That was what they were going to use them for. He was charged with flying an aircraft full of marijuana into Kentucky, pleaded not guilty, fled, was arrested in North Carolina, brought back to California, and then released on bail.
Then he pled no contest to the felony charges and was given, I think it was a suspended sentence for that, but 6 months for the misdemeanor drug charges.
Well, but when he was on bail, right, when he went back to Kentucky, he was shot twice in the chest, close range, with a .38 caliber revolver. This was in February 1982. He was wearing body armor, what they then called a bulletproof vest, and the police thought that he had staged the whole thing because it would be more sympathetic for his upcoming hearing. He probably did. I imagine he probably did. Who knows?
Makes sense.
Oh, I believe it.
He'd probably seen it a bunch of times. Somebody putting on a show for a court.
Oh, the chance to get shot in public, that sounds definitely like something that a thrill seeker might do, especially one who's kind of pushing the envelope every chance he gets. So he's going bigger and bigger with everything. Like, he smuggled in like 20 tons of marijuana over years. Like, he was going bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it makes me think of John Orr, who we covered before, firefighter turned arsonist, another thrill seeker looking for just more opportunities to fight fires, more opportunities to kind of figure out the bad guys, so to speak, and be involved in that whole thing. Another one who just couldn't get enough and kept going bigger and bigger. The method with which he used kept getting more elaborate and so forth. And it was just through him trying to always be right at the forefront of everything that was ultimately his demise. And yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about somebody who can never get enough, that they create the problems just to be able to work with more problems.
Yeah, we've covered a lot of sensation seekers, but Andrew's really, he stands out even among.
Right.
You know, there's just, the jumping out of the planes, the drug smuggling, suspected homicides later on. He was into everything. But according to what I have here, he pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor, but they've dropped the felonies. He went to prison for 6 months, and his law license was suspended. Then we see he's suspected in a number of homicides, so he apparently graduated. to more serious crimes. But there was quite a few. There was a Florida state's attorney who prosecuted one of Andrew's conspirators who ended up dead, strangulation death of a witness, and a man who had told the authorities about Andrew's smuggling. So he was not convicted of any of these offenses, though.
No.
Amazingly enough.
I think the reason he wasn't convicted ultimately is because he died.
Yeah, probably, yeah. They were closing in on him, it would seem. So this takes us to the intersection with the Bear, September 11, 1985. In the movie Cocaine Bear, the plane is ridiculously large.
Yeah. It's a really large plane, and he's alone on the plane, and just like it looks like he's coked out of his mind because he's like got music blaring and he's just running back and forth, grabbing duffel bags and throwing them out of the thing, and then he goes to jump out and smacks his head on the door, and it knocks him out, and he falls to his death.
Yeah, in real life, it was a Cessna 404.
Yeah, which is a very small plane.
Yeah, an impressive twin-engine plane, pretty amazing aircraft, but definitely not the size of what we see in the movie.
Right.
I think they just needed the room for the way they envisioned the shot.
Right.
Like inside the plane to be massive.
The dramatics of it.
Yeah. But in a 404, you'd be crouched down. Like it wasn't spacious.
To give the image of how much cocaine he was tossing out there, I mean, if he had just the 2 duffel bags that they had that we know existed, that's what 160 pounds worth of cocaine. That's a lot. That's millions of dollars worth of cocaine. But for movie vision, you're looking.
You need more cocaine.
You need more cocaine. You need more. Like, it always has to be more. Like make
Just
it
like
bigger.
the Bear said.
So you need a bigger plane because it wouldn't do to be in a little Cessna. Plus, putting the cameras in the Cessna would be a little bit more difficult. But I do like that 2 things in the movie that they're up for debate, right? As far as what happened. One is that there was nobody else in the plane, which is one of the hypotheses that he was alone, and 2 that he hit his head going out the door, which is one of the other hypotheses because there was a lot of damage done to his face. One of the coroner hypothesized that the damage done to his face was because of the bag of cocaine, that he jumped out and the bag swung around and smacked him in the face, which kind of disoriented and dazed him, which he wasn't able to pull his chute until he was too low.
He tried to engage his reserve, right? But it was not successful. That's how I understand it. Or he did deploy it, but too late, right?
Yeah.
So he was too close to the ground. But you can't judge distance when you're at nighttime like that. It's very hard to do. Even if it was like a full moon, I don't know, it would be very difficult. Although he was very experienced, and he had a device on him that could reveal the altitude. Yeah. But probably something caught him in the head when he was trying to get out of the plane.
I've got my hypothesis. It's not based on anything other than some of the other things that happened, like the more than likely staged gunshots, and that was that one of the other things that came up was that there was somebody else in the plane. Right. A guy who came forward to the police years later said that he was hired by Andrew to be his bodyguard when he went down to Colombia. So he was in the plane with him on September 11th on the way back. And then that Andrew then bailed out, and then he bailed out. I have this hypothesis that maybe Andrew hired the bodyguard that time to try and fake his own death. Right? So he takes these 2 parachutes, because if you're gonna try and jump out of a plane with a parachute and you have another person there, they're gonna ask, why are you wearing a parachute? They're gonna want to know, like, Jeff, why do you have a parachute on?
I didn't think you'd notice.
But we're in a plane and you have a parachute on. I don't have a parachute. Where's my parachute? That's just a natural question I think most people would ask. Yeah. And I think that Andrew knew that, so he brought 2 parachutes. Now, Andrew was very, very adept at packing parachutes, having been a paratrooper and having parachuted out of planes many, many times. So I think it's possible that he took 2 parachutes. One of them was packed to fail. It was designed to fail, and that was supposed to go on the bodyguard. Because then the plane goes down, the bodyguard falls. If the bodyguard jumps out, he gets a parachute that falls, dies, splat. Then Andrew can just kind of out and gone from the cartel, from the police, from everything. Leaving just enough evidence behind to point the bodyguard as being him. Right? But he picked the wrong parachute.
That's possible.
Could be.
This is a hypothesis based on some other things. It may or may not be the truth. But I think it's an interesting one.
Could be.
The irony, I suppose, of a well-laid plan that fails because he wasn't paying attention to which parachute he picked up and put on.
Yeah.
It could be. It could be. But yeah, we do know that he landed on a driveway and really surprised the neighbors.
Yeah.
They weren't expecting that.
No.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I mean, it was the middle of the night. I always kind of look out my window right around 11:30, 11:35 just to see who's landed in my driveway.
Yeah. See if anybody out there is dead.
I am most of the time disappointed. But it's really funny because the guy who found him, his last name was Meyer, I believe. When he called 911, he said, "There's somebody in my driveway. If y'all don't send somebody out here to take care of him, I'm going to go out there and take care of him myself." So he hadn't even gone out of his house when he saw him. Didn't know there was a dead guy. I just thought there was some vagrant laying in his driveway. It wasn't just a vagrant.
No, it was Andrew, and he did not survive. He had some interesting items in his possession. 2 pistols, 9mm and .22 long rifle, 2 knives, $4,500 in cash, gold coins, compass, key to the airplane, food, vitamins, an altimeter, right? So a membership card to the Miami Jockey Club, 2 different driver's licenses. And one of them had name Andrew Bourbon, one had his real name. So he was ready for a lot of different situations when he landed there.
Was he wearing anything on his feet?
Gucci loafers.
Wow. Huh. It could have been me. I mean, not the death part, but
No,
the Gucci part.
we're glad that it wasn't you.
Well, I mean,
it was in 1985, so
that's true. I
you'd have
wasn't
been
born yet.
not born yet.
There's still a chance I could wear those shoes. Not to die, just to wear them, you know.
Interesting detail, though. Actually, he was not wearing Gucci shoes. That was a misnomer. One of the people who was there identifying items looked at his boots, which were skydiving boots, and said, "Wow, these are," and just rattled off the name brand. And one of the detectives was like, "What?" He's like, "These are really good boots. These are like the Gucci of skydiving boots." So the detective just wrote down, "Okay, Gucci skydiving boots," and it just became like ran from there to people just thought it was Gucci. It's kind of like everybody thought the bear ate 80 pounds of cocaine. Somebody said Gucci referring to the footwear, and everybody just assumed they were loafers. But they were high class. He also was wearing a wristwatch that could shoot tear gas. It's really expensive. It's the reason I couldn't go into my line.
If only you had the capital.
Right? That's a guy who would have been perfect
That's
customer
right. That's true.
for me. But again, I was 4 in 1985, just at 4 years old, not able to build the capital to start that business at that point.
For some reason, you didn't have hundreds of thousands of dollars
No.
at 4 years old.
No.
Well, sounds like a pretty bad childhood to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to make stacks of like forts using stacks of hundreds of $1,000.
I mean, isn't everyone able to do that at 4 years old?
I mean, no.
No.
Not everybody grew up like you, Jeff.
With millions of dollars lying around. You know, what was interesting was we were talking about how the criminals evaded authorities back then. And they dumped some cocaine, landed in Georgia. Of course, he went down out of the plane with some cocaine with the duffel bag.
It's 70 pounds.
Yeah. And then it had the plane on autopilot, I believe, and it crashed.
Yeah,
Right? It crashed
60 miles
60
north.
miles away in North Carolina.
In North Carolina, yeah. This one night crime spree of left one dead, went over 3 states.
And perhaps doing that so that they could.
I'm sorry,
somebody else.
2 dead because there was the bear.
Oh, that's
The
true.
bear.
The bear died too.
So somebody else could go get the cocaine in Georgia. Andrew, would have it on him, and then they'd think, "Oh, the plane went down. I guess they all died," or something like that. This evasive kind of maneuvers that they would think, "Okay, we can try to cover our steps a little bit." Obviously, didn't work out here, but I'm sure it worked out in a lot of different scenarios where somebody else was able to get the drugs. They were able to leave. The plane went down. They lost money on the plane, but they were able to get away without being caught.
As expensive as planes are, when you're carrying a bag of $150 million,
Drop in the bucket. Yeah.
yeah, that Cessna, it's not the biggest priority.
Only if you come out of it alive, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, relative to, the Cessnas weren't cheap, but yeah, the millions of dollars was, you could carry a lot of money worth of drugs.
Right.
And buy yourself several planes with that.
But that speaks to the back to my hypothesis of him trying to fake his own death. Like, he drops the drugs in a place that they wouldn't normally be dropped, because Georgia was not a place that they normally dropped, because most of the stuff was coming through Lexington. And then he jumps out with another bag and just lets the plane crash like that. That seems to me to be an attempt to hide. And he's going with a nest egg, right? Or trying to.
Right.
Maybe he thought he could sell the drugs
Yeah.
for millions. And
Like, if the cartel thinks he's dead, they're not going to come after him. And then he can just go north, like to Canada or something, and just sell it there down south.
well, if he was trying to fake his own death, he did get the death part right.
Yeah, unfortunately, not the fake part.
Yes, he missed the a crucial descriptor in the term.
One crucial element in this did not work in his favor. That element would be the parachute.
Yes, so the 3 months later, after this, investigators found the plastic bags of cocaine, and this is when they noticed a bear who had passed away, 3 or 4 grams in his system, which was plenty to cause fatality. And that was it for Andrew Thornton. His story was over in that driveway. And that brings us to the Cocaine Bear movie, which came out in 2023.
Yeah, in February. Mm-hmm. And we're filming this in May. Only a few months ago. Mm-hmm. And before that movie came out, my fiance and I were just sitting around in our living room, and she's just looking at she was watching YouTube, and one of the YouTube surveys came up, and it was just like, "Have you heard of any of these upcoming movies?" And she's like, "Yeah, no, wait, there's a movie coming out called Cocaine Bear." She turns to me and she says, we have to watch that, right? I'm like, yeah, with a name like that? Duh.
A lot of the stuff that we do these episodes on, I'll mention it to my wife and say, "Oh, we're doing on such and such, whatever." And, she's indifferent or doesn't really care too much or whatever. And I say, "Yeah, we're going to do Cocaine Bear." And she's like, "So that means you have to watch it?" Well, yeah. All right, don't watch it without me. So it's an abnormal occurrence that she's interested in something like this too. So it's a broad range of people, and it's just based on the name, probably. Just based on that concept that this bear is somehow into cocaine and murder and something else. It really reaches to a lot of people, which is super interesting.
It connects with a wide audience, right?
That's true. That's true.
That's a story about them.
So right now it's streaming on one of the streaming services.
It's on Peacock, I think.
It's on Peacock, yeah. But they also have Cocaine Bear, the documentary, the true story of the Cocaine Bear, which talks about a lot of this stuff. It's crazy. My fiance was the one who said, like, when I said we were doing Cocaine Bear, we'd already watched the movie together. And I was like, "We're doing Cocaine Bear." She's like, "So that means you're watching the documentary, right? Don't watch it without me." So we watched it the other night. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
But the movie does take liberties.
Well,
quite a few.
The man who wrote the screenplay gave an interview and said that it was fun to reimagine the bear story. I was thinking it's hard to, like, the bear died like very quickly after having the cocaine. Like, so anything is imagination from that point. Like, that's a pretty basic story. You pretty much have to reimagine that to do anything with it,
Right.
because otherwise you just have this bear on the screen and he's like, oh, look, cocaine. Yeah. Credits.
Right.
Like, so yeah, it's funny, like creative types, like reimagine. It's fun to reimagine. Yeah, everything was imagination with this bear. It's like, okay, basically Cocaine Bear was the only thing that matched the movie, right? That there was a bear, ate cocaine. That was
Like close to 40 years people have been imagining, like, if you hear about the Cocaine Bear story, like, how much cocaine did it eat? What are you talking about? It ate cocaine. Like, and people imagine it. The reality is it ate the cocaine and died on the spot. Like, there wasn't much. But again, imagination does tend to take away with people, and they run off. And I for one, am glad that the imagination went where it did, because I thought it was a good movie.
good is such a strong word.
Like, there were elements of that movie that were specifically designed to be super campy and reminiscent of the early 1980s slasher flicks, like Nightmare on Elm Street and
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th, a lot of Friday the 13th, and Halloween. Like those really went with some of that. But also with a little bit of more of the darker humor kind of things that I actually really appreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly, the Cocaine Bear was only responsible for about half the deaths. Like directly responsible, like claws on.
Right.
Directly responsible for about half.
The rest was people interacting with each other and getting mad, and gunshots and fights.
And indirectly.
Right.
Yeah.
Indirectly involved.
Ray Liotta, right?
Yeah, Ray Liotta.
And really
his last movie.
last movie. And really, I think an actor that was never appreciated. Like in Goodfellas, he was tremendous.
He was amazing in Goodfellas.
Like people watch Goodfellas, and many people watch that movie. They became attracted to film because of him and Joe Pesci. Both did pretty good job in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Pesci went on and had a pretty good career. I feel like Ray Liotta he did okay, but he kind of reminded me of a way of like Tom Sizemore, who a very good actor, somebody who took acting seriously but never really reached where they should have reached. I think he had a lot more miles in him that he was not be able to capitalize on. But he did get in the Cocaine Bear movie, so
yeah,
he did a good job.
Mm-hmm.
I love Ray Liotta as an actor. I mean, he did do a lot of really bad movies.
Yeah, he did.
But he did do a number of really good movies. Mm-hmm. I mean, he was absolutely in Goodfellas. There's an HBO movie called The Rat Pack. Mm-hmm. He played Frank Sinatra in that. It's a phenomenal movie. And of course, Cocaine Bear.
He was talented. Sometimes I think sometimes actors are kind of like overvalued, and like we see the same ones over and over when they're not necessarily super talented, and other talents get forgotten. I think Ray was forgotten. Now, Tom Sizemore, who I mentioned, he was forgotten because his drug use was like, he had more drugs than the bear. Like Tom Sizemore, his whole life was drug use. So incredible. So really, probably he did better than he should have based on how much he consumed. And he lived to 61, which it's just hard to believe with his own stories, his own words about his drug use. But sometimes people don't get a lot of credit. And Ray Liotta he was a good actor. He's a talented actor. I don't remember the other people. There's a lot of kind of B actors that filled out the rest of the movie, right? There was a guy from Modern Family who had a role. I think his character got wiped out. Many characters did get wiped out.
Well, yeah, of course. The
Cocaine Bear,
Cocaine Bear it was on a rampage.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember who else. No one else really.
There are a lot of faces in that movie that people know.
Yeah,
but
character
from
actors,
other things. A lot of character actors. Yeah. Of course, it was directed by Elizabeth Banks. She's amazing in everything. Isaiah Whitlock, famous from The Wire. Mm-hmm. Been in dozens of other things. You know his face as soon as you see him. and the really long expletives from The Wire. Just the one sound. Just keeping going. Margot Martindale. Everybody knows Margot Martindale. She's been in everything. She played the Ranger.
Right.
You look at her face and you're like,
She did a good job. She did a good job.
Yeah.
She did a great job. Like I loved the portrayal of her character in the movie, and just some of the haphazard stuff that happened after we got to see the first big cocaine bear attack.
Who's the actor from Modern Family? That show's so well written.
Is that Jesse Tyler Ferguson? Is that who you're talking about?
He was wiped out by the bear pretty early. I don't remember.
This guy?
Yeah, Jesse
yeah.
Tyler Ferguson. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was very good in Modern Family, and when I saw his face, I'm like, that guy looks familiar.
Mm-hmm.
And then then it clicked. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they spent a ton of money on actors.
Right.
It was a large cast of mostly people kind of in the mid range as far as popularity.
But I think they did a good job acting with what they had.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Their interactions were really well done.
To your point about the darkness of the movie, surprised the role of the kids in the movie. The ones that found the cocaine or found part of it anyway, actually did the cocaine and were like kind of daring.
Did the cocaine.
Right, kind of
It's a
daring
strong
each other.
term.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they dared each other to ingest and all that, It was...
Neither one of them knew how to actually do cocaine.
Right. It was kind of a ridiculous... I mean, the whole movie's ridiculous. Kind of a ridiculous take on that, but it's like, well, you know what? Went along with the movie. There's a lot of weird things about that movie, and there's another one. It was unique, but it was...
But
yeah.
12 and 13-year-olds often do act that way.
Right, yeah.
They do. So I wasn't surprised by it. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
I thought it was funny that they thought they were high.
Yeah. Something you wouldn't see, obviously, in a lot of movies.
Right.
But it took liberties, of course, in this movie you wouldn't see in other movies, much to its credit.
Andrew Thornton's part in the movie was done rather quickly.
Yeah. He did.
Like
I don't know who the actor was, but he didn't have a big role.
Right.
Yeah.
The movie starts out with him throwing stuff out of the airplane.
Gigantic, novelty oversized airplane compared to what he was supposed to be.
Just tossing stuff out.
I was trying to think of
Matthew Reese.
Okay.
Matthew Reese.
the bear looked pretty good in the movie. Just the way they animate whatever they did for that.
The Bears.
The bears.
Yeah.
And I was trying to think of what that would look like. Let's say they came out with this movie in the 50s or 60s. Some kind of...
It would have been a dude.
Right. Somebody in
In
a
a bear
costume.
costume.
Just white powder all over the face all the time.
Yeah.
And just comically going after
In the
people.
50s, it probably would have been cocaine on
Probably.
the bear mask.
And that image in my mind of a 50s or 60s cocaine bear movie and people just shrieking in horror and running from it and the kind of chocolate syrup, fake blood that they'd be throwing everywhere.
It's brilliant. We have to film it.
It really is.
That is brilliant, and we do have to
It
film
really
it.
is.
We can do a shot-for-shot remake of Elizabeth Banks, Cocaine Bear, with just a dude in a suit. We'll put Jeff in the suit.
I'm there. I would
Black
happily.
bears, and it'll be a black bear suit, and we'll just put a whole bunch of. Well, we'll probably use just
Flour or
powdered
something,
sugar or
yeah.
flour or something like that, cornstarch maybe.
Yeah.
Definitely not real cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah,
that'll be over the summer.
Done.
We'll make our shot-for-shot remake.
There we go.
in black and white.
Bella Grande Media ventures into ridiculous movies.
Wait, we're venturing there? For
Full length.
2.5 hours of us talking about random things isn't a foray into filmmaking. I don't know what is.
We could also try a different animal or a different drug, like
There you
heroin zebra. Yeah.
That would just be a really boring movie because a heroin zebra would just lay down and go to sleep.
And just sleep in the whole movie.
Just sleep in the whole movie.
If they really wanted to reimagine Cocaine Bear a lot, really reimagine it,
Klonopin koala.
you could. The bear could have embarked on a career. He could have fought his cocaine, like we talked about. Could have fought the addiction, but instead they made him like a homicidal maniac. But yeah, it really kind of harkened back to many of those horror movies, the low budget,
Yeah.
right? Very low budget movies, surprisingly so.
Yeah.
All those kind of early horror movies. Horror movies weren't popular back then. Nobody wanted to fund them. And
So
some people took some chances.
They did. They took some chances. They had incredibly low budgets and had to spend a lot of time and effort trying to figure out how to do the effects that they wanted to do, which is why some of those old movies are really bad. But then you get the talented makeup artists who figure out how to do the thing they want to do. Like I think one of the most successful early shots was Kevin Bacon,
Right.
in Friday the 13th, laying on a bed and an arrow comes out through his neck.
Before he was anybody.
Right, but yeah, before he was anybody. Like the arrow coming out through his neck was the effect, and it was amazingly visceral to see that. That was an amazingly well done effect, and I think that it was effects like that carried that movie.
I'm trying to remember if it was Friday the 13th, but it was one of those early horror movies. I was watching a documentary about it. And, you know, when you watch movies, a lot of times, you just assume that they have everything they need to make the movie when they start out. You figure, most people, I think, picture, many people probably picture, like, you know, some wealthy person's like throwing cash at these Hollywood people. Well, you know, the production budget was very limited. And they had just gained access to a rig that a cameraman could wear that would keep the camera level.
Oh, okay.
And it was Friday the 13th, again, one of those movies. It was a long shot through a house, and it was all done with this. It wasn't really new technology, but it was new to them because they just barely could afford it.
Right.
And that was like, they just kept talking on and on, like, we had this rig, you know. It's funny, kind of, you know, what you take for granted.
Yeah. But you know, filmmakers, especially of that time, like they got creative with everything, and they loved the new technology they got. But I'll always remember the Raimi cam. Sam Raimi, amazing filmmaker, started off with Evil Dead, the Evil Dead movies in the early '80s. Again, horror slasher flicks, and the Raimi cam was they took the camera and mounted on a 2x4, like right in the middle. And it had two people, one on either side, carrying it and going up and down. So it has this kind of just weird, tilty kind of camera angle. They're like tilting up and down and moving as they're running through the woods. And it gives a really weird effect. And was such a great classic shot. It became, you know, was seen really well. And they actually, Sam Raimi did Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2. And Spider-Man 3 in the early 2000s. And if you watch in Spider-Man 2, the scene where Doc Ock, they're trying to remove his tentacles, they actually switch to a shot from the tentacle view, and they use the Raimi cam technique there in that you know, huge budget movie. They use the same technique to give you the view of the tentacle as it's moving around in really weird ways. So, I mean, sometimes the low budget things work really well.
Yeah. I remember learning about some of the techniques that Hitchcock used to use. Obviously much more funded than what you guys are talking about, but the kind of things that you do when you don't have what you really need. And at that time they didn't have zoom on the cameras. So to figure out how to do these long sweeping shots without being able to zoom in, you had to move the camera. And the kind of tracks that they might put it on, or the kind of contraptions that they might develop to be able to get a camera to go long distances from high up and so forth. And it's amazing the kind of creativity, much to your points, that somebody can come up with when they have a shot in their mind, they have something in their mind, they can see it. They just need the camera to be able to see it. So 2x4s, or, you know, figuring out how to get these certain shots that they have in their minds.
Turning off the hot water.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the classic things in Psycho that Hitchcock did. Sometimes to get the shot, Hitchcock was a jerk. Like they're filming the scream, the shower sequence where she screams. He's filming it over and over and over and over and over again, and just like he's not liking it, so he keeps going. And then to get the scream that he really wanted, he shut off the hot water and didn't tell the actress, didn't tell anybody he was doing it.
That's the way to get a scream.
Shut it off. Same thing in Die Hard, right?
Right.
Alan Rickman.
The character Hans, Alan Rickman,
Alan Rickman, they practiced the stunt of dropping him over and over and over again.
Spoiler alert for
Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the greatest Christmas movie ever,
right?
Die Hard, check it out. But they practiced it over and over and over again. And every time the stunt coordinator would say 1, 2, 3, and drop. And then when they had the camera on and they're shooting, they're like, okay, action. And the stunt coordinator's like, okay, 1, and let go. So they get this beautiful shot of him falling, and this just look of shock on his face was completely real.
Right, genuine look.
Because Alan Rickman did not realize he was going to be falling that right then in that moment.
Yeah, that was another movie that was plagued by all kinds of problems, but they worked it out.
Yeah.
Interesting in the end, toward the end of the movie, there's a scene where they have the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where the terrorist, whatever, basically stealing money, came out of a box truck.
Right.
And then later on, you find out that box truck was supposed to have the ambulance in it.
Yeah.
Right. That was the whole getaway.
Right. That's the big plot,
Right.
hole that exists. But I'll tell you, years went by, years of watching that movie repeatedly over and over again. And I didn't realize until somebody pointed out, where'd the ambulance come from? What?
You can clearly see they're coming out of the truck, and there's no ambulance behind them. It would have reflected, because the truck wasn't that big. It was just big enough for the ambulance. And one of the producers or directors, or whatever, just said, just leave it. Like, they didn't even try to fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
I figured.
But that's the thing. Like, where they have that shot and where they have the shot of the ambulance coming out of the back of the truck are so far from each other in the movie that you don't remember. Like, nobody remembers. There's so much has happened between now and then that you don't remember. This is why I watched it for years and never realized that until somebody was like, "Where'd the ambulance come from?"
Well, Cocaine Bear didn't suffer from a lot of continuity problems, as far as I could tell.
No, it had pretty decent continuity, the whole thing, and did have some homages to other flicks. I mean, definitely had the homages to the old slasher flicks of the '80s. Definitely had some dark humor.
Yeah,
dark humor stuff.
That's good shots too. Like
also an homage, like one of the greatest homages in one of the great movies, one of the great comedy movies of all time, Great Outdoors, with John Candy and Dan Aykroyd. Yeah. There's a scene that almost, it's an homage to that because it almost recreates one of the bear sequences from Great Outdoors. If you haven't seen Great Outdoors, shame on you, and you should go watch it. It's from the '80s. Spoiler alert: there's a bear in that movie. That's bald. The bald-headed bear. Had its hair shot off with a shotgun. So the story goes. But it comes breaking into the cabin and just knocks the door down right on top of John Candy, and it's just standing on top of bouncing on top of John Candy. It's a hilarious sequence. But they do the exact same thing in Cocaine Bear. It comes out of a back room right on top of somebody. And just
like the ranger station.
Yeah, it's whatever. The ranger station.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a little homage to the Great Outdoors there.
Yeah.
Which is...
I like the shot of the bear trying to get to the ambulance where they slowed down the... You see him kind of flying through.
You had to do slow motion shots like that. You know, you've got this ridiculous movie, ridiculous coked up bear. You got to do it.
Oh yeah, if you're gonna do something like that, you have to go over the top.
Yeah.
If you don't go over the top with a movie like Cocaine Bear, like, what are you doing?
I did think. I mean, this was not supposed to be a masterpiece of writing, obviously. But I did think it kind of fell apart a little bit at the end with the plot devices. I think it just unraveled.
Sure.
I think it was a strong movie for what it was in the beginning and the middle. But like so many movies that have kind of a simplistic basis, they have trouble wrapping it up because it didn't have any meaning in the first place, and an ending is about discovering meaning.
We're trying to give this real meaning to this movie about a bear.
Don't use drugs. What was the message, right?
Coked up out of its mind.
When you're flying in a plane, be safe with how you drop the drugs. That was the point of it, obviously.
Yeah, I guess. Or don't give bears cocaine.
The bear could become like a spokesperson for cocaine animal awareness program, like, trying to keep cocaine out of the forest. I don't know what. Well, there was Smokey the bear.
Smokey the bear.
The counterpart.
The counterpart. Cracky the bear. Just say no to crack.
That would be the mascot for the bear version of Dare.
It'd be Cokie the bear. I missed it. I missed the beat on that. Cokie the bear. It rhymes with Smokey.
Well, we got to think of an acronym now for the school program that they're going to bring into bear schools, cub schools, to teach them about saying no to drugs. You know, you had DARE for the humans. I mean, could it just be bear? I don't know. Could they make an acronym out of bear? They probably could.
Yeah, you can make an acronym out of just about anything.
That's
if
true.
you try hard
That's true.
enough.
Yeah. We'll have to come up with an acronym for bear to use in bear cub school to get them off of drugs.
Yeah, that would have been a better ending. Well, it wouldn't have fit with this particular movie, but that would have been a more meaningful ending to have the bear kind of turn his life around. Did they ever say
go to
the
rehab.
bear was male or female? It was female, right?
It's female because it had bear cubs.
Turn her life around and go on, you know, a speaking circuit.
There you go.
That was one of the biggest liberties they took in the movie. The actual cocaine bear in real life was male, and they made it female in the
Because they had
in the movie.
the device with the cubs.
Yeah,
right?
they wanted to go with the cubs. And by and large, bear males are not known publicly as being great, you know, providers with their. It's like everybody knows the mama bear stays with the babies. The papa bear just runs off. So I'm going to go out and get a pack of smokes, and it never comes back.
So yeah, end of the movie. I think I also felt like the end of the movie was shot at night. It was supposed to be at night, and they stayed in that scene for a long time. I felt like that just really dragged in a movie that was supposed to be, you know, you're supposed to see the bear killing people and everything, and it really just slowed down and got much darker. And I think it was also like there was a waterfall.
Yeah,
which is very complex. I felt like they just lost the whole shot. At one point, I was like, I don't even know what you guys are doing anymore.
Yeah.
But, and they didn't bring it back. So kind of, I felt like it was a disappointment toward the end.
I don't think they brought it back around, but they were trying to get some closure for a couple of characters and bringing them around to like do what's right, you know, instead of focusing on like, well, what are we going to do with the bear? No, the bear just kept going. The bear goes after the cocaine and gets the cocaine and gives more cocaine to the bear cubs that have been doing cocaine.
Never got hooked up with like a supplier.
No.
You know, like there's just so many. I guess it's an opportunity for Cocaine Bear too.
There you go.
The drug connection.
Eventually, we'll have Cocaine Bear 10. Cocaine Bear goes to space. Eventually, like I think that harkens back to horror movies, right? Like Jason X. You know, I swear it was just supposed to be Friday the 13th, Part 10. Jason goes to space. Because the one previous to that was Jason goes to hell. Oh, Jason goes to space. Oh, we'll have Cocaine Bear go to space. And we'll make a shot-for-shot remake of that one, too.
Well, we'll
just do the whole franchise.
Yeah, all 10 of them. Yep. It's the only way to do things.
Every single one. We're going to get that bear costume.
When I think of a lot of sequels, the horror movies definitely have a lot, but Police Academy always comes to mind for some reason.
Oh, yeah.
So many sequels.
And they got like Police Academy, the original, I thought it was actually a really good movie in many ways. Offensive, like by today's standard, couldn't hold up, you know, with the
there's
change in attitudes.
so much stuff in that would not pass muster today.
Yeah, it's just because everybody, you know, or not everybody, but many people these days want to kind of take today's values and superimpose them over, you know, the 80s and 70s and going back many years. So it distorts everything from that time. But in the time, it was a great movie. Police Academy is a great movie. And I think 2 was okay. And then just kind of I don't know what they were doing there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, they went downhill.
Yeah.
They did.
To be clear, though, I am okay with all of them. Like, I don't...
You don't judge.
I obviously, like you said, the first one, it went downhill. But, you know, movies like that... There was this movie I watched the other day. It was a spoof on Fast and the Furious franchise. It was called Super Fast or Super Cars or something like that. It was an awful movie, but I loved every minute of it. It was that slapstick, cheesy kind of awful stuff. But, you know, I personally cannot get enough of that. And it was exactly what I expected it to be. And it lived up to every minute of it, as terrible as it was. And then I just happened to see one a few days later. It was a spoof on the Hunger Games. I don't even remember what that one was called. I don't know. It was a spoof, but it was done by the same guy. And it was the same thing. I expected it to be just as terrible as it was, and it met my expectation, but I loved every minute of it. And personally, I can't get enough of stuff like that. So even as Police Academy went downhill, as they came out with more and more, I'm okay with it. And if they came out with another one, I'd still be okay with it. I'm sure of it.
The only reason I would accept another Police Academy movie is if they got Michael Winslow in it.
Yeah, right. You're right.
He's actually literally the only person who's been in every single Police Academy iteration of anything, like all the movies and the TV show. In case you didn't know, there was a Police Academy TV show. It was very short-lived, but Michael Winslow was in every episode and every one of the movies. And his character's one of the best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he attracted fame for the sound effects and the original, which were incredible.
They really were.
It was
So good.
He's absolutely incredible at making noise. There's a network called Dropout, college humor shows on there. They have one that's called Game Changer, which is a game show that changes every episode. They had one they would come and redo a couple of them every once in a while. One of them, they started out just having the contestants do sound effects. And when they got to, during COVID, they were doing it via Zoom. One of the people who was on the contestants couldn't do the episode. So they actually asked Michael Winslow if he would do it. So he comes on and just like, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
It is absolutely brilliant. And like, he even was so wonderful. Like, he would start doing sound effects with the other people to help back them up in what they were doing. It's hilarious. So good. Michael Winslow's a great, he's great at that.
Incredible. Yeah.
He would have made a good addition to Cocaine Bear.
He could have.
Yeah.
Especially came in the police uniform. Because, I mean, there were definitely cops in.
There were police in the movie, right?
Yeah.
Kind of every group is represented in the movie as far as around the criminal spectrum.
Yeah.
You had the police, the criminals, you had some people that I think were in between.
Yeah, right.
Maybe aspiring criminals.
Right, right.
Willing to be criminals.
Yeah.
Willing to embrace cocaine.
I mean, if we wanted to, there could be made a really good and compelling movie about Drew Thornton. Like, you can make a really good, compelling movie about him, about his life. Hitting some of the big high points. You want to get a good, like, Goodfellas level, like, gangster story, or Blow. Only movie I've ever walked out of, by the way. Blow. Yeah, that one I found boring. But
it was pretty boring, yeah.
It was.
But but we could make one that has that kind of that level of accuracy and that level of seriousness surrounding Drew Thornton. And honestly, if we were going to do it, the last thing you do, you don't even mention the Cocaine Bear until the very end. Like, you just the last sequence before the credits, or even like the after credits is just the bag there, and then and the bear walking towards the bag, and then you're done. You're done.
Yeah, Andrew was an interesting guy, and it's curious the bear gets so much more attention than he did.
I think that just Cocaine Bear grabs more attention, right? Andrew Thornton had a amazingly convoluted life. Like I said, movies could be made of that about his life. That would be compelling and would catch people's attention if based on a true story. And for some of it, because of how over the top he was, you wouldn't even have to exaggerate much.
No, I don't. Yeah, you might have to tone it down, right?
That's true.
Right. Yeah, we're gonna pull this back a little bit.
It was reported that he ran a guerrilla warfare training camp for mercenaries.
Yeah.
He looked forward to Armageddon. he couldn't wait for Armageddon, like the adventure of, I guess, what he thought would be lawlessness.
Right.
Yeah. Before I read anything about that, I was thinking about him like, man, if he'd survived, if he was alive today, he'd be a prepper.
Yeah.
Like, he'd be a doomsday prepper.
That's
like
true.
He would have a basement that is just loaded up with, everything.
Yeah, he was. He was looking forward to Armageddon. He had prepared for it. Yeah.
It's like the way he's described it sometimes, especially at that point when he was jumping out of the airplane on September 11th, 1985. Like, he reminded me of that one guy from Tremors, the crazy prepper dude from
Also
Tremors.
good series movies, right? Trevor? There's a few of them, right?
Yeah. There's a bunch of them. They're absolutely terrible, but again, if you like terrible movies, they're amazing. Kevin Bacon again.
Kevin Bacon and the guy was the guy you're talking about. Was that the guy from Family Ties?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the father in Family Ties with Michael J. Fox. It's an older show. It's going back some years.
Yeah, you probably haven't seen it.
I've seen cups of it, but I wasn't even born yet. I had no reason to go back and watch Family Ties. Yeah.
Those shows come up from time to time when you're going through all the streaming services that we have to now have in order to do
Watch
things
anything.
like this, right? And you have to see
To
it.
watch things like Cocaine Bear.
And every now and then I'll click on like an old show like Family Ties, or the other day it was Love Boat. Remember Love Boat?
The love.
They got a lot done with very few sets, right? It was the same. It's like the same 2 sets or 3 sets.
I think we have more cameras than they do.
Sure, yeah. But interesting stories, just as a tangent, which we never do.
Never.
No, we never do tangents. Wait for the next episode of Tangents, by the way.
Coming up on tangents.
That's where we save
Who
all our
knows?
tangents. That's where we save all our tangents for tangents.
So the Love Boat was a small, very small cruise ship compared to today's standards.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, it's a big yacht. I'm convinced that there's other, many billionaires these days that have boats bigger than the ship used in Love Boat. But I don't think there was ever a fatality on that ship until it was sold after the series, and some men died working on it below decks in some type of horrible accident. But yeah, I think it might have been actually being disassembled. I can't remember, but yeah, so people actually died on the Love Boat, but not when it was.
Not when it was the actual Love Boat.
Yeah.
Not when there was actual love involved.
No, it was later. When
After
all
the love.
when all the love had gone.
But yeah, it's just weird looking at those old shows these days and seeing how different they were.
Yeah.
And how different you remember them. Like before you watched an episode of Family Ties, like I saw them all when they first aired.
Yeah.
That was a show that I watched. It was part of NBC's Thursday night lineup, if I'm not mistaken. It was Cosby Show, Family Ties, Cheers, and Night Court.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was Thursday night, because Thursday, that's the big night.
Right.
I remember watching Night Court.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched the new episodes.
It came back with one of the original characters, right? One.
John Larroquette.
Yeah. Yep.
I think they brought back a second one in the season finale,
Okay.
but only for like that one episode.
So much of that cast has passed away. But either way, it's strange looking at those old shows and in a modern light. They really were, I don't want to say simplistic, but they did not have edgy themes like you see these days.
They weren't as fast paced as current
Very
shows.
few plot
well.
twists. Yeah, Love Boat, like when you saw the first scene, you knew where the whole episode was going. Like it was you never had to wonder about any type of cleverness getting loose. Same thing with Family Ties.
No, it's not like they really did stick to formulas in some of those, but still, some of those shows gave us some really good things. They might not have seemed to be touching on big important things, but sometimes they did. Especially like Night Court. One of the first episodes of Night Court had Michael J. Fox before he was anybody, right?
And Brent Spiner.
Yeah,
Early episode.
Yeah, Brent Spiner was definitely a
Recurring character.
Yeah, over and over again.
Yeah, one that would now be offensive right now. One that where people would be like, "Oh, you can't do that," because it's it's a stereotype of, I guess, kind of you're supposed to be like maybe poor and from the South. I think is what they're looking for, something like that. I can't remember the South part, but he was poor.
The hayseed kind of.
Yeah, him and there was a woman that always appeared with him. I don't think she achieved any fame, but Brent Spiner went on to be Data.
Yeah,
a much better role for him.
Yeah,
I think.
much better role.
Yeah. But yeah, well, and Cheers had some complex themes around relationships. You know, that one was kind of edgy, I think, and attracted some negative attention even then.
Yeah.
Now it's probably just kind of normal. You know, I think it kind of caught up, like the times caught up, the attitudes caught up with Cheers. But yeah, the other shows were very, very vanilla. You know, like they're easy to predict and basic.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what you want, though.
Yeah.
Not something that's easy to predict and vanilla and just, okay, this is comforting because I know what's going to happen.
Yep, that's true.
The controversial shows back then, 10 o'clock and on. Yeah, that's what they... So like St. Elsewhere, I think it was 10 o'clock.
You want to look at a show like, which we haven't referenced it yet, The Simpsons. Okay, you look at some of the episodes from back in the 80s and the early 90s, and they were almost linear. I get from point A to point B. You know what's going to happen within the first couple of minutes, and it's going to follow through.
Mm-hmm.
Very formulaic. But I just was watching the newest episodes of Simpsons just recently, just like I think it was on Monday, Sunday or Monday, and like they get to a point like they started the one that started out with Homer losing his wedding ring under the house, so he goes under the house to get the ring back, and there's a whole bunch of skunks, and he gets skunked. And like it goes from there to like Marge and Lisa making this gigantic charity for homeless people, and it's like I would never have predicted that within the first 5 minutes. Like I have no idea that this is going to become a commentary on how billionaires use charities as tax shelters, like just because Homer went into the crawl space and got skunked. Like they really have, and that's true of many other TV shows these days. Like you can't always tell what's going to happen in the episode. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you can, but sometimes they grab you and then throw you a curveball or a wiffle ball at this point, because curveballs is not enough, because curveball just wiffle balls.
Yeah, I think just like clothing trends, I think cinematic styles, plot devices for series, kind of they have fads that come and go, and probably someday we'll get back to Family Ties and Love Boat. Who knows?
Maybe.
You know,
No, they might be working on those as we speak for one of the streaming services that we have to have in order to watch any kind of
that's right.
any kind of steady television.
Yeah, right.
Times have changed. So, all right. So, yeah, that's Andrew Thornton, a paranoid sensation seeker who was looking forward to the apocalypse for the adventure. He wasn't exactly fearful of it. He wanted it to happen. Yep. And it inspired a interesting movie with a lot of adventure. I would say this. I don't know if you remember Siskel and Ebert, they're my favorite movie critics. They had a simple system, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right.
It kind of reduced everything to, is it worth watching or not? Mm-hmm. So it's worth watching. It's not high praise, but it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If for nothing else, for the social aspect of it. A lot of people were talking about this movie when it came out, and it's just such a ridiculous movie. Obviously, that's one of the reasons why we're doing it on here. And it's probably just one of those movies, like, just talking to friends about it. And that's probably why a lot of people saw it, because they're just so curious about it. And people are bringing it up, and it's in a lot of popular media and stuff. So I would give it a thumbs up as well. Shows
you the importance of a title to hook in a moviegoer. Like, if it's just called Bear, people are like, I've seen a bear.
Yeah.
If it's just cocaine, like, well, that could be a very dark movie, cocaine. Yeah. Cocaine Bear. Tell me more.
You've intrigued me.
Mm-hmm. Like that is intriguing.
Yeah.
People watched Titanic, knowing how it ended.
Yeah.
Right?
That's true.
So,
a lot of people watched Titanic knowing how it ended.
Right. So, if things work out or don't work out for the bear, people know the story. It doesn't matter. They're going to watch Cocaine Bear. Yeah. And of course, the movie had I guess you could say, a better ending than the real story. Mm-hmm. Although the bear was homicidal. So
it was only homicidal while it was on the cocaine. Okay. Once it came down, it was back to being a gentle, wonderful creature of the forest. It was the babies that were still strung out and really went on a rampage after that. Spoiler for the end credits scene. I love the fact that Cocaine Bear just exists, and it's helped me out a lot actually in practice. If I'm doing lectures for my client base, we often talk about things like anxiety, because anxiety is a big thing that comes up with trauma, which is hugely prevalent in drug and alcohol, substance use issues. So we'll talk about anxiety and be like, okay, anxiety is like the prep step for fight or flight, right? If you have to evaluate, are you safe right now, right? Like if Cocaine Bear comes through that door right now, and I've said this numerous times since February. I'm like, if Cocaine Bear comes through that door right now, and they always laugh about it. Cocaine Bear comes through that door right now, and we're all going to be in fight or flight mode. That's not anxiety, right? Right? Cocaine bear is a real threat, really going on. That is fight or flight. But if we just think cocaine bear is outside the door and we start freaking out, that's anxiety. And we got to ask ourselves, am I safe? Is cocaine bear really outside that door? I might want to go into the other side of the room or put a few people between me and the door before I'm going to be okay with not being, with thinking that maybe cocaine bear is not outside the door. But that's anxiety. That's what anxiety does, and that's how we talk about it. So I'm grateful that cocaine bear exists so I can do that because that's just an amazing a tool to use in a rehab.
Highly relatable, apparently.
Yes, it's highly relatable. I could be like Fozzie Bear was on the other side of that door, nobody would care.
Waka waka.
Right? Waka waka. Oh no, Fozzie's coming.
Cocaine bear is a fantastic therapeutic tool.
We all know it.
I am convinced that if used right, anything can be a therapeutic tool. And cocaine bear has become a therapeutic tool, at least a little bit.
Very good. So any final thoughts about the Andrew Thornton case or the bear that the case inspired?
I got nothing. I said all I could say about Andrew Thornton and Cocaine Bear, and I thumbs up, and thankful to have watched it. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have watched it otherwise.
That's your type of movie?
But, well, it may be, but you've got young kids. Obviously, the rest of your day is taken up by kids and work and your responsibilities. So when you've got somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes, maybe every day, that you might be able to watch something, you got to pick and choose. Cocaine Bear sounds very intriguing, but there's other things that I'm invested in that, I'm going to spend my 30 or 45 minutes, if I have it on that day, to watch. So I'm glad I watched it. That's what I'll leave it with.
Mm-hmm. My final thought, I think, I think that we can't use flour or baking soda or anything like that. I think it's going to have to be a little bit more realistic than that. I think we're just going to have to get a whole bunch.
Cocaine.
We're you use the old movie trick, right? You crush up a bunch of aspirin into a fine powder and use that. Okay, that's what they do when they have people actually like snorting on film. It's just aspirin. You don't want to try snorting sugar. And aspirin can actually help with the inflammation that might be caused by, snorting some powder into your lungs. I think we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to use aspirin, just a whole bunch of aspirin, and just smear it all over the bear costume. This is happening. I'm passionate now about this. Jeff is going to be Cocaine Bear in
1950s.
In the 1950s style Cocaine Bear, shot for shot remake of Elizabeth Banks. Elizabeth Banks, I love you. But we're doing this. If you want to be involved, please let me know. We could use the involvement.
We need some extras and some people to die in the movie.
Yeah, there's going to need to be people who die in the movie. We're also going to need a lot of chocolate syrup.
That's true.
Just saying. Because it is going to be shot in black and white. Chocolate syrup is one of the best things to show up
naturally
as blood. Yeah. And that's my whole takeaway from all of this is that Jeff is going to be Cocaine Bear in that bear suit.
Jeff Pincin is 1950s Cocaine Bear.
1950s Cocaine Bear.
Well, back then there was morality rules about movies. So the bear, you could have made a movie like that, but the bear would have to lose. That was the bad guy always had to lose. And there was some movies where that kind of dramatically happened, like they had to force that in the last second.
No, they did that. Like the bad guys did lose because it's a morality play of like the bear's just trying to get cocaine.
The bear's not the bad guy.
The bear's not the bad guy. The bear's just being a bear, and then it found cocaine and it got addicted to cocaine. Right. And if we're using our mores, and even in the 1950s, we'd just be like, it was just going along and cocaine. And then there's these drug guys coming in and trying to kill the bear and take that cocaine back so they can sell it. They're the bad guys. And the bad guys got it in the end.
Maybe we take the Elvis kind of rules and only show from a certain portion up, and there's no gyration, of course. And we don't actually ever see any cocaine. We just imply that there's cocaine.
Yeah, you just imply that cocaine is there.
And we talked about this last week after we had recorded. Maybe they have some kind of, now what'd you learn from this Cocaine Bear? I shouldn't do cocaine.
I shouldn't do cocaine.
Is that a bad idea? Yeah, it is. Maybe we do something like that. Really redemptive qualities.
Yeah. We get a narrator involved at the end. That's where we take a departure is with the ending.
There you go.
You know, instead of doing the whole waterfall sequence,
That has to go.
Just-
Yeah.
we just go to the 1950s style narration.
Right.
Narrator over top. Just cocaine bear. What have you been up to? Oh, just a few murders.
Just
Did you
snorted a
eat that
few
cocaine?
lines- Snorted a few lines of cocaine and killed some people.
Now, was that a fun way to spend a Sunday? Yeah.
I mean,
Really?
no.
No, I guess not.
And then he joins the Boy Scouts or the
Yeah,
Peace Corps or something, and
He joins the Cub Scouts.
like, I missed it. Good one, Mike. Good one. Good one.
So fascinating case with the cocaine bear. A case definitely divided into two dark stories.
Mhm.
Andrew Thornton on one side and the bear on the other. I can't imagine that Andrew Thornton ever thought about his future any more than what his next exciting adventure was, like in that moment.
Right.
I can't imagine that he ever thought there'd be a movie based on a bear that he killed through his recklessness.
Just inadvertently killed, too. I
Yeah.
don't know.
It kind of reduces his life a bit.
That's true.
But then again, he probably was a homicidal maniac, so
Yeah, very, very likely.
probably didn't deserve to be remembered well.
The instances where people were suspected of having been killed by him, I'm pretty sure were.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
He strikes me as somebody who is escalating throughout his life, getting more dangerous.
And then if he had gone to court, a lot of grisly details would have come out.
Ha 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 ha.
Could have been very polarizing.
Oh boy.
On that note, we'll wrap up today's episode with Thornton and the cocaine bear, Andrew Thornton and the bear. We will be back with more episodes pretty soon of Alien, Lizard, Humanoids, and of course the murder part. Maybe a movie part. This was kind of like, we talked about this, right? This is kind of like a movie part.
Kind of like a movie part. Alien Lizard movie part.
Yeah, it had a movie part to it.
There you go.
There's the Alien Lizard cocaine bear movie part.
So any ideas for
No,
future?
no humanoids were harmed in the making of this episode.
Any ideas for other videos? Please put those in the comments or any thoughts at all. We read the comments.
And of course, the tchotchke for this episode is going to have to be a bear.
I think so, yeah.
I think there's no other choice. I mean,
Right.
Perhaps a bear with some cocaine involved.
possibly.
Cocaine and blood on its face or something.
Possibly.
Yeah.
I might see if I can try and recreate the poster
There you
in
go.
3D bear form.
That's a good idea.
So as Mike is working on that, we'll be working on other episodes. So again, any ideas, comment section, certainly appreciate it. We'll be back soon. Thanks for watching.